It's believed the 27-year-old driver lost control of the Volvo as it approached the crest of a hill on Wai'i Road about 2 kilometres west of the Pacific Highway. The car veered onto the wrong side of the road and slid sideways into the path of a VW Combi van travelling east at the time. The 2 men in the Volvo died instantly. Police believe speed was to blame for the crash and say the driver of the van would not have seen the out-of-control car until the last moment. The enormous impact of the crash can be seen on the side of the buckled car, where the front-mounted tyre of the Combi left a clear imprint. The driver of the van, 32-year-old Darren Boyd of Budgewoi, was trapped for around half an hour as Cooranbong and Central Coast rescue teams worked to free him. He was taken to Wyong Hospital and later flown to the Royal North Shore in Sydney, where he remains in a critical condition with serious head injuries. This is the promotional video Taree City Council is hoping will put the town on the manufacturing map.
Astride the magnificent Manning River on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, it offers advantages that other urban centres can't. An excellent heavy industry and factory infrastructure amid a superb natural environment.
Shot and produced locally under the direction of the Manning Development Board, the 13-minute presentation gives a detailed look at what Taree has already achieved in the manufacturing sector, featuring small pieces on several successful businesses, along with endorsements from their management.
The Lord Safe Company moved from Sydney to Taree approximately 2 years ago. Relocating to Taree has been a great success. It has given us a stable workforce, reduced overheads and increased productivity.
Tonight it will be officially launched in Taree before a crowd of media, community and business representatives. Then it will be the subject of an aggressive statewide marketing campaign at conferences, company meetings and on regional television. Taree Town Clerk Charles Chatwood said its aim is chiefly to capture the attention of manufacturers, possibly struggling to keep their head above water in large cities. From the Taree point of view, the video promotes such benefits as lower rents, council incentive programs, the establishment already of industrial estates, opportunity for expansion and a ready workforce, that attributed to the current high level of unemployment on the mid-north coast. To emphasise the point, Taree City Council proudly points out its local industry is riding out the present recession relatively well. There have been only minimal retrenchments according to Mr Chatwood. The only notable cutback, the move by automotive parts manufacturer Brylight to introduce a 4-day working week.
Daniel Marshall is 10 years old, and for Daniel, crawling represents 18 months of hard work. 1.5 years ago, he was hit by a car, sustaining head injuries doctors said would leave him a vegetable. But his parents refused to accept the prognosis and embarked on a therapy program.
When we brought Daniel home from the hospital, Daniel couldn't move, he couldn't pick his head up, there was no speech. No movement of his arms or legs. Virtually we had nothing at all. Daniel's now he's not actually walking, but he's getting close to it, and he can feed himself on his left side with his left hand, and his speech is coming back.
Lately, Daniel's progress has been enhanced by this machine, the Danish-developed Unitems unit. It stimulates blood circulation, ultimately increasing oxygen flow to the brain.
You won't feel anything yet, Daniel. But now you tell me when you start feeling something, okay?
I feel.
You feel it? That's good. It is an electrical muscle stimulator. And what it does, it sends a low current through the muscles, so it contracts and relaxes the muscles like vigorous exercise.
Vigorous or not, it's part of a 4-hour daily therapy routine, and Daniel's reaction is what you'd expect from any 10-year-old.
Does it feel okay?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
But it's boring.
It's boring? Yeah.
Combined with other therapy, it's hoped the machine will help Daniel walk again. Chris Barth, NBN News.
The Hunter is one of the richest areas on the east coast for traces of an almost vanquished culture. The tribal elders of the traditional custodial men's council are imparting their knowledge to a present generation of Aborigines, who are in turn sharing part of that with a wider community. Malcolm Smith plays in the Knights under-17s and is a student at Boorrigal High. He's also a custodian of Aboriginal law and proud to share it with his school friends.
I've been waiting for a long time to do this, to bring it to the school and to show them what Aboriginal do outside of school, the dances.
The troupe performed spiritual, hunting and folklore dances accompanied by Newcastle University's Michael Davidson on didgeridoo. Council member Bill Smith was pleased with the response.
It's created a better understanding and awareness of our culture and our law and appreciation of part of the history of this country as a whole.
To further understanding, the Council is negotiating with the National Parks and Wildlife Service for the development of a bushland education centre near Wollombi.
But we're working to setting up a base camp up in that area to where we can have the proper supervision by our men that's been through the law is to take people on tours so there's no desecration as well, and protect and preserve them as part of the heritage of this country.
Australia imports 100,000 tonnes of fish each year. Local waters are being fished out, but while consumer demand is increasing, the size of the catch is falling away.
If you have the markets and the resources and the technology, then you have the ingredients. Well, you need investors.
American, Canadian, New Zealand and Australian scientists have joined a special workshop at the Brackish Water Research Station looking to new nutrition formulas for feeding fish bred and grown in captivity. Traditional fish meal feed is proving uneconomic. Grain or legume-based feeds like those used in the pig and chicken industry offer fish farmers the answer.
Currently they pay about $1,300, $1,500 for a tonne of feed. I think they could reasonably get it down to less than $500, and that would then make the industry extremely economical.
That dramatic saving opens new channels for the aquaculture industry. Initial trials on these jewfish and silver perch have been encouraging. Grown in ponds like these, the fish offer a huge potential market for farmers in the Newcastle and Port Stephens area. Fisheries scientists are indeed hooked, but they stress it will take time.
We don't want to see a repetition of some of the experiences we've seen in the sunrise agriculture industries. I would like to see a development in a sustained and sensible fashion.
Though the city has always been popular with investors, the last 3 months has seen a marked increase in demand in both the retail and industrial sectors. Now Newcastle is boasting the highest rates of return from investment properties than any other city in the country.
McGee's have sold this property here at Katara Park for $1.8 million recently. That showed a return of 12.5%. Now in Sydney you would expect that sort of property would show somewhere around about 9.5 to 10%.
Though business is quiet in Newcastle's CBD, elsewhere the future could not look brighter.
We find now that we've got a list of investors looking for properties and we can't get enough properties to satisfy that demand. So I see the even demand that we're experiencing at the moment improving as interest rates fall off over the next 6 to 12 months.
Industrial properties like this one in Cardiff tell an equally optimistic story.
People that acquired industrial property when we were going through that flat period in the mid-80s have done extremely well out of it over the last 2 or 3 years. We've seen rents jump 40 to 50% across the board on industrial space in that period.
A group of Hunter Valley Training Company apprentices and volunteers are racing against the clock to play their part in the festivities. They're attempting to get an 80-year-old South Maitland Railways loco back on the rails after it was mothballed 7 years ago. Engine number 18 will be the fourth from an original fleet of 14 to be restored to running order. Water was pumped into the loco's boiler, simulating the pressure under a full head of steam. Before it's allowed to run on the tracks, it must pass stringent safety inspections. Apprentices are reassembling engine parts and adding finishing touches in a determined bid to see it's ready on time.
Yeah, it's going to be good this weekend when it comes up, you know. See them out there chugging along. Yeah, it's good.
I'll be glad if I get a ride on it. It'll be good.
Number 18 should join the passing parade of steam locos from around the state. As well, steamships on Newcastle Harbour are billed as Steamfest attractions. As many as 40,000 people are expected to visit the area over the weekend.
At this stage, Maitland is completely booked out of accommodation. We have nothing further left.
Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News.
David Frost is the Professor of English Literature at Newcastle University. While he's better known for his books about Shakespeare and his translation of the Psalms, he has now turned his hand to writing fiction. The first book to leave his typewriter is The Deed's Creature.
Well, the publishers describe it as sex, murder, mystery, religion. That I think is true, although it's not quite as lurid as that sounds. It's a detective novel with real people, with real feelings, interacting.
It's unusual to have one published author in the family, but even more unusual to have two. By September this year, David's wife Christine Mangala will also have a book in print. The covers of both books have been designed by sculptor Kristen Walker and her husband, celebrated Newcastle artist Graham Cox. Kristen created the sculpted figures which appear on the cover of The Deed's Creature.
I got my bit in. I said, a part of the foot of the murdered girl has definitely to come across the spine of the book. That's because if I saw a foot on the spine of a book, I'd immediately go to it. Not because I've got a foot fetish, it's just that it would look good.
The artwork for both books, together with a wider selection of their sculpture and paintings, will be exhibited at Newcastle University's Great Hall over the weekend. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
These smiling faces are just some of the team members from Lingard Hospital's IVF program.
It's been the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. It's really wonderful to be able to be involved in helping couples to have babies.
Dr. Clark helped set up the program for people with infertility problems in August 1984. It was the first outside a capital city and started with nearly 400 couples on the books. In 7 years, Dr. Clark and his team have worked with more than 1,600 patients, recording the second highest pregnancy rate of 22 programs around Australia.
You go through a lot with your patients, and I'm going to miss them very much.
Dr. Clark will take up an administrative position in Sydney next week. He will be replaced by a highly regarded gynaecologist who has worked both in Australia and overseas.
The New South Wales public sector alone uses around 30,000 tonnes of paper each year. In these environmentally conscious times, that's a lot of waste and a lot of cut trees. A recent survey by the Hunter Water Board found that 90% of the office waste stream is paper, so a strategy has been developed to deal with that. This department is a test case for what will hopefully be introduced throughout the board's regional offices. Bins for different grade paper have been scattered around the room.
High grade is mainly your white paper, your computer paper, laser and photocopy paper, whereas your low grade is your coloured papers, cardboard, that type of thing.
Paper recycled at Wickham Industries is put through the photocopier and both sides of computer and typing paper are used.
At the moment the board's spending approximately $65,000 in purchasing paper products. We're aiming to reduce that by 25% in the first year.
It's also hoped garbage costs will be reduced. At present, the board spends $43,000 a year on collection.
So we'd certainly like to challenge other offices to adopt similar policies and implement similar schemes.
This is the vessel that Tomago shipbuilder says left it $3.2 million out of pocket. Placed in receivership last December, Carrington Slipways is struggling to find the money to cover redundancy payments to its 450 workers. But its employees' representative committee believes it could make those payments if the MSB reimburses it for money lost during the building of the David Allen, thanks to a design its teams describe as little short of appalling.
Our engineers have proven that certain aspects of that vessel were incorrect. We have had an independent opinion from Lloyd's which stated that certain parts were defective in the design.
The MSB contracted the design out to a local firm, but Carrington Slipways says it believes its instructions and guidelines were vague, based loosely on an overseas boat, and its technological requirements too ambitious for a boat that's nothing more than a workhorse. Many times engineers were forced to halt work to make inquiries and changes. As a result, the shipyard says the project came in $3.2 million over budget, and while the MSB paid the agreed contract price of $12 million, it's disputed all but $170,000 of Slipways claims.
And the MSB with this one have seen in some of the people's eyes to be stalling, because it's only a matter of weeks and we won't be here any longer. So if we're not here, we mightn't be there to pursue these claims.
But that allegation was strenuously denied by General Manager of the MSB's Hunter Port Authority, Jeff Connell, who said the shipyard could only blame itself for the problem. Mr Connell said Carrington Slipways were given the opportunity to view the design prior to the beginning of work, but they went ahead and agreed to the contract. The real villains in this incident are not the MSB, but the directors of the shipyard, who failed to keep provision for their workers, he said. Trying to find entitlements for employees is a matter between the workers and the company, not the company's customers. We should not be nailed to bail them out.
With almost 10 antique stores already in the area, the plan is to create an old world atmosphere at the intersection and attract some of the hundreds of motorists who drive by each day. Local store owners and residents gathered late this afternoon to toss around ideas on the future of the area they've dubbed Islington Village.
Several of us have been to Bowral, Mittagong and had a look at their areas to see what it's like. We wanted something like that. Things out in the footpath, etc., so we can attract people in here.
They're delighted with the proposal compiled by planning consultants engaged by the Newcastle City Council, but feel the council should buy 2 nearby blocks of land for more parking.
We need every inch of parking we can in Islington. We've got 2 blocks of land that could be bought immediately by council for $135,000 and virtually next week turned into car parking spaces, rather than waiting 20 years, etc., for that sort of thing to happen.